Hey everyone, let's talk stories. In today's episode, I'll be talking about The Covenant of Water by Mr. Abraham Verghese. And I'll start this with a quotation, one line from this, which actually sums up my opinion of this book. So the line which starts with an young boy addressing his mother, where he says, then after finishing a book, he talks to his mother. When I come to the end of the book and I look up, just 4 days have passed. But in that time, I've lived through 3 generations and learned more about the world and about myself than I do during a year in school. And he ends this line by saying, all the characters in the book die on the page so that we might live better lives. So, and that's exactly how I feel about this book as well. Now this The Covenant of Water is a book that spans from 1900 to 1977, that is set in Kerala, that's on South India's Malabar coast, South India's coast, and and follows 3 generations of family that suffers a peculiar affliction. And that peculiar disease is that in every generation of their family, at least one person dies by drowning. And in Kerala, the place where this narrative is set, the water is everywhere. Now, to start with, the narrative starts with a marriage proposal to a 12-year-old. When a 12-year-old young girl is being married to a 40-year-old widower. Now, that's where the narrative kicks in, and it goes on to explore the next 3 generations. The next 2 generations include the generation including the girl who is being married, then the next 2 generations, and it explores the concepts of love, faith, and heartbreak that follows throughout the generation, right? The only character that stays from the beginning to the end, is almost to the end, is the girl who gets married in the first chapter. The girl is rarely addressed by her name. She is mostly addressed as Big Amachi, which translates into Big Mother. Now, and this so when I read this book for the first time, it actually reminded me of Desi version of Cain and Abel, or Desi version of Clifton Chronicles, or Desi version of Pachinko. All this this actually satisfied so many of my cravings to read some rooted story in India. And this actually this satisfied my cravings very much. And what a book to start the year, right? And it has everything in it. It has uh, it has the rooted nature of a story, where story is true to the land where it's originated, where the people are from. It doesn't have any Western tropes. It doesn't even blink an eye on Western tropes or to get inspired from anything else. It has its own material to tell. The story has its own material to tell, and it sticks honestly to that. Well, this is my very brief introduction on my what I feel about this book. And as always, there are 3 things I talk about. One is character, prose, and story. And now, the order in which I'll be doing this is prose. I'll talk about prose, and because character and story are very much intertwined in this, in this larger than life novels. So the prose is I was surprised with the prose. I was genuinely surprised with the prose, and I was delightfully surprised by the prose because of multiple reasons. One reason being, there were some, I was afraid that the prose might have a Western take on Indian culture, but it actually, the prose had very much rooted conversations, and there were some conversations where I was gently surprised to um, see the writer talk in native language of Malayalam or Tamil, where where the most of the story is set in, right? When you read the book, you feel that writer has genuine respect for the people, for the people who have lived, for the fictional people who are living in his narrative. So that's what gives, that's what shows an honesty in the narrative, right? When you don't respect the characters you are writing, you get a sense of arrogance and authoritativeness over the characters, but we never see that. We see a gentle, careful, careful affection of the writer towards the characters, and that's a delightful thing to watch. And one fun final point of the prose is that you see a trace of you see a trace of culture being danced between the lines in the prose. Like you see Indian people when when they're talking with white people, there is a sense of respect. There's a sense of not even respect. It's a sense of relationship between a slave and a owner. So we get that upper class lower class dynamics being played out between whites when a conversation happens between whites and locals, or when the conversation between happens between upper caste and lower caste. This bias is actually clearly visible in the prose, and that's what makes the prose so well written, uh, so honest, right? And I think the prose is one of the greatest strengths for this book. And I think first, if you're just looking for a one word verdict on it, and I think you should definitely pick this up. And I think, as mentioned, as I put this image here, it's one of Oprah's book club picks or something. And if you are interested, Oprah also did a six episode podcast with Mr. Abraham Verghese, discussing the entire 10 parts of this book. So this book is actually divided into 10 different parts. And so Oprah did a six episode podcast with this writer with Mr. Abraham Verghese, discussing the whole 10 parts in an elaborate detail. Now that we are done with the prose, I'll talk about characters and the story. So in this way, I'll talk about only I'll mix both of them. I'll talk about characters and stories in one single go. So basically, there are like literally dozens of characters that are present, but the first two characters we get introduced to are the girl. Let's say the Maria. Let's call her Mariamma one, and her husband, like a 40-year-old husband, right? He's a widower. And the first impression that we get out of the alliance that happens in the first chapter is, okay, this is just a typical scene depicting patriarchy, child marriage, and all these things, right? But I was afraid that when the first scene came in, I was afraid that, okay, this better not be a same old book, depicting shortcomings of pre-independent India. Now, no, that was that. There are some depictions of indicating what are the not so good things about the pre-independence era, but the writer chose not to focus so much on that, but instead the writer delves more into the the intimate connection between human nature. Let that be the connection that happens between a child, literal 12-year-old Mariamma one, and her husband, or very intimate relation which develops between Mariamma one and a child, and her husband's child from a previous marriage. Now that is that's a beautiful sight to watch, about how this child and this little kid, and her mother, who is not, and her new mother, and his new mother, who is not that much older than him also, like how they form a bond, and how this young uh, uh, wife, right, how she starts to take care of this guy, of this kid. Now there are so many things that we need to talk about in this book. Mainly, you see an extreme patriarchal undertone in this book. Either the which starts with Mariama being married out at the age of 12. Or now, starting from that point, it tackles so many issues, like I said, the patriarchal issues, or there's a casteism. Like there is a fantastic scene which explains the effect of casteism on people who are being oppressed and who are the oppressors. And there is a title of the chapter which I'm not able to get, which I'm not remembering, which goes something like this, uh, kind oppressors humble oppressed, or something like that. Now that's exactly what is happening. There is a among when this Mariamma when Mariam gets married into this family, there's a servant to the family named Samuel, who is a loyal and trusted servant of this the husband. The husband is, the owner of this big estate called Parambal. Now this Sham the Samuel guy, he is from a lower caste where he the only place that the only way that Samuel is being treated is with the eyes of a servant. And though they love him, but he's being kept at he was never invited into the house, or he was never served food in the plates of of house members. Now when as the story progresses among, like, with tumultuous events happening, starting from, like I said, so the main theme of the book is about a mysterious condition that runs in the family, where at least one of them is will be drowned, right? Now when the son of the when Mariamma wants son, like he's close to his son, like basically son of his husband from his previous marriage gets drowned. Now that's where Mariamma gets introduced to this curse, to this weird condition. And uh, he gets introduced to the people who were victims of the same condition in previous generations. Now as the narrative progresses, we see various instances of heartache being portrayed in an extremely generous way. And we see a portrayal of first love being bloomed between characters. And we see how one person can heal a wound left by another person, right? There are these multiple tropes that you see all throughout the book. And especially there are some delightful scenes where after Mariamma gives birth to his son. The son's name is Philippos. And by the time Philippos grows up, and Philippos' father is dead. No, Philippos becomes the owner of vast estate of Parambil. With the help of Samuel, he takes care of all the estates. Now there are, like I mentioned, and Philippos gets sent to Madras to learn about poetry. To learn about poetry. Now there are some fantastic scenes that are set in that are set in during the World War II era, where how Indians got affected in while participating in the World War. And uh, and one of the scenes was when Philippos was asked to go back home because of some disability that he have, which prevents him from focusing on the studies. He before on the way back, he actually he decides that he doesn't want to give up, and he loads a bag full of books, so that he'll because now that he is not able to go to a place where he can study, he'll bring the studies with him. Now along with those books, he borrows a radio along with him. you know and there are so many of these instances where, and the immediate instance is one of my sweetest meet cute moments, where he meets his future wife on the train, where she draws him sleeping. Now uh, they have a secret past. They have These young people have a secret past attached to them. And how Philippos, when he was little kid, when he was a small kid, rescues a young baby on a ship, on a small boat, risking his life. Okay, there are hundred, because this is an extremely long book of around 800 odd pages. And there are some phenomenal gut wrenching moments throughout the book. Now while the story of Miss Miss Amachi is traversing. There is another story which gets which we are exposed to, the story of Mr. Digby Kilgore, a Scottish doctor who comes to India to be part of Indian medical service. Now we see Mr. Digby Kilgore, the doctor, get join into a join a Madras hospital, and we see his experience with first love, and we see his experience with heartbreak, and how did it affect him, and he moves away from all those people, and he gets introduced to a other honorable another honorable doctor called Roon, who takes care of the leprosy patients. Now, this is not. I mean, we don't see so much of these two doctors, but in the back of our mind, there we will still be looking forward to how a story of Miss Mariama's family gets linked to a story of Mr. Digby Kilgore. Now, we see a story we see Mr. Digby Kilgore's uh, path perpendicular to how Mariama's family path is going, but we see gentle subtle intersections between those two, like Philippus actually meets Digby Kilgore once when he was little kid, where he said where I mentioned that he saves a child's life. Now, there are these multiple instances of intersection between Mr. Digby's life and Miss Mariama's family's life. Now, I was little bit wary on how their intersection, how the final intersection look like, but I was pleasantly surprised with the way that the final intersection of those two families happened. Now, obviously, I'll not reveal that because it's the only twist that's there throughout the book. Now, Philippos gets married to Elsie, the girl he saw on the train, and their marriage proposal is also sight for sore eyes. What a scene it was, and after the marriage is where the problems begin. Now, their first child will die because of an accident. Now, both the parents blame each other for the death, and they move apart. They move apart, but after a couple of months, Mariamma one, Mariamma one also has a daughter, where the daughter doesn't have a name. They'll just call her by her nicknames. The girl had a thyroid deficiency, so deficient disease on her, so she there is no growth observed in there's no growth observed in you know on her physicality and mentality as well. Now, when Elsie, the Filippo's wife, leaves, Mariama's daughter, who is so much attached to Elsie, actually gives a stubborn stands still with a stubbornness, saying that if Elsie doesn't come back, I'll not eat. Then that persuades Elsie to come back, reunite briefly with the family after disappearing into the water. Now, in this brief time, so she gets pregnant. She delivers a baby. The baby's name is Mariamma 2. Now, this is the third generation of the story of the family, Miss Mariamma's family, where the narrative ends. Now, Mariamma 2 grows up to become a fantastic doctor, and she even gets assisted and assists the doctors in leprosy cases. She becomes, and we see a fantastic scene about how Mariamma 2 handles harassment by her teacher in a class. I laughed out loud when I was reading through the reaction of Mariamma 2. Now, there are so much that I can't that can't be put into the my opinion, because just have to experience it. So it looked, I never wanted this book to end. I wanted to read this book every day, because there was such delicate understanding of human nature that is trapped in this book, that I never want to let go of this, and this is possibly the first 5 star of this book, and this is the first book that I've completed this year. And what a book! It just knocked out of the park. And there are so many undertones of war, and so because this happens both in the British Indian era and also the post independent era. There are so many aspects of how were the how were the Indians reacting to British oppressing. And what was it, what was the scenario like when when World War II was happening and Britishers were recruiting Indians to fight on their behalf. And uh, and how did what was at the very core of it, there are some there's a strong story about medicine. There's a strong story about human body, because at every stretch of the novel you see uh, one or the other storyline which involves some medical condition, be it Mariamma 2's introduction, Mariamma 2's uh, special, Mariamma 2 becoming a doctor in their first own in the village's first hospital, or be it rune curing Digby's hand, and be it Digby performing surgeries. All there are like fantastic stretch of sequences that you will not even be bored for a minute, right? And also there are a couple of scenes that I want to talk about. One of the scene is where one of the what they call a character, there is a character called Uplift Master. So it's not exactly his name, but the villagers named him as Master because his actions are for the upliftment of the society. They started calling him Uplift Master. So this Uplift Master, when he becomes a translator in a big public meeting, he becomes a public translator to a Western guru, Western orator, or Western priest. Now, in that meeting, it's a heartwarming moment where uh, because of the cultural sensitive things that the Western priest was talking about, this Uplift Master starts translating it differently in a different way, which prompts, which drives which drives the meeting in a direction for for all the people attending the conference to donate for a hospital, for a much needed hospital in that area, right? That's such a beautiful piece of scene where all the people of the village or around the village starts contributing to that construction of a hospital, which after a couple of years, where Mariamma returns back to as a doctor. There are these fantastic tropes of humanity, fantastic tropes of faith that are underlying this narrative, which makes it a delightful read. Now, as I said, I'm going back and forth because I'm still coming out of I'm still starting to recollect my thoughts about the fantastic fruition that I felt by the end of this book. Because the conclusion, I was afraid that the conclusion might spoil this, but the conclusion is that is it's pretty apt, and it makes there are some logical decisions that the author took. I think I would support those logical decisions that he took, you know and that you'll get to know once you read this book. And I would say this is a must read for probably anyone. This doesn't The books like this doesn't have a genre. The books like this doesn't have a motive. It doesn't even have, like, it just have only one ulterior motive, is to talk about a human life, talk about what is it to experience pain, what is it to experience love, what is it to experience heartbreak, what is it to experience pride, right? All these things. So, and one of the and well, in the afterwards of the book, Mr. Abraham Verghese, actually, I was surprised to see this. Mr. Abraham Verghese actually says that the the mood of the book, and some of the material of the book is actually inspired from his own mother's journal of, not journal, mother's uh, writing of around 150 pages, telling Mr. Abraham Verghese's niece about her experience in living in Kerala. Now, this book this book tells multiple things. This book have multiple tropes, has dozens of plot lines running through it, but at the very core, it's a story of humanity. It's a story of compassionate people. It's a story of people who shows empathy, who at least try to show empathy on the people next to them, who doesn't have ill intentions towards people next to them. I think that's the I think portraying this emotions, portraying these characters honestly is an extremely tedious task. But I think Mr. Abraham Verghese pulls it so efficiently that that's it's a genius task. It's a mark of genius. Now, I think I would recommend anybody who wants to read this, because it's a long video that it's a long. I'm speaking for so long, and if you're still stuck around, which I hardly doubt, so you should pick this. You should try to pick up the audiobook rather than the ebook, because Mr. Abraham Verghese himself performed in the audiobook, and he did various voices of these characters. And what a book, what a book. And there is I think I missed mentioning one important scene that I started telling in the beginning, that there's a conversation which happens between Philippos and Samuel's son, where Philippos, after Samuel is dead, and after Philippos' father is dead, and both only Philippos is taking care of the of the estate. Philippos talks to Samuel's son, who is a very close friend, who is a childhood friend of Philippos, and he asks him to, yeah, he gives him some money, he gives him some land to Philippos, and asks him to be his manager, to manage the estate. Now, Samuel's son looks at Philippos in a deep thought and says that, okay, now you are saying that my father has been the greatest asset for you. When he worked for you, he towed the lands, he considered you as family rather than more than me. Now you are saying that he's extremely important to you, but you are giving me what, meager 20 acres of land for all the service he did. Now let's say if my father is not Pulayar, which is a servant. Now if my father was not exactly, was never a Pulayar, but instead he was your relative, like, do you still treat him like that? Do you still give him that meager 20 acres and 20% of profits to him? It doesn't. When people see that, when people like people might look at the offer that you gave me and thought you are the says that you are so generous. But if you do the same thing for one of your relatives, one of the people from the upper caste, they will think that you are robbing me, right? So you may not think of me as a caste that's less than your mother. My as famous my favorite Ammachi might not think of me as a caste, of me as a lower caste, but subconsciously the reason why you are offering, or your mother Big Ammachi has saved up some money from my wages, from my father's wages, and gave it to me. Subconsciously you still think of us as servants. We were never your equals, and we will never be your equals. So that conversation, these words, when Mr. Philippus gets these words from Samuelson, it hits them very hard, and he doesn't know how to take it, because he never consciously thought of his friend as someone from lower caste. So all this, so this actually brings up an extremely important one more extremely important point, that subconscious bias that we have towards the people around us. And that's there, the undertone of it is also there throughout the book. And one final thing, I'll wrap this up with saying one final thing, that one more thing that this book actually does extremely well is capturing the rural India's scene, like it, that too in 1900s. Now this it's not possible without doing extreme intricate research, and I think Mr. Abraham Verghese done that to the point. Now there are some narrative points, there are some pros points that I see, that even as an Indian I'm not aware that Mr. Abraham Verghese, still Abraham Verghese brings up. Now it involves their food habits, it involves their housing, like how do they keep their house clean, what do they eat, how are the familial relationships, like what are the issues between that comes up between land division, what are the issues that comes up when a marriage proposal goes in. Now what are the issue what is the uh, uh, process to what is the process after a person's death, all these things, right? So I think there is an extremely intricate research that was done by Mr. Abraham Verghese, and the research is shining like a glowing diamond throughout the book, and it's one of the strongest it's one of the strongest points in the book. And I think it's better to conclude now, because if you are someone, I think, who just would like stories, who is not afraid of the length of the book, who just wants to have a good time reading the book, I think this is definitely for you. I would highly recommend this. And yeah, that's about it for this, and I'll catch you in the next one.